My pleasure.
This is Kevin Pruitt with Rising Tide Startups, and my guest today is Alexi Neocleous. Alexi, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
It's
Looking
good.
forward to it.
It's good to have you. I think we're on absolute opposite ends of the planet right now.
I think we might be. I think that's actually spot on.
I think you said which you said it's 9 a.m. in the morning. It's 7 p.m. where I am the day before. So, as we were talking off camera, I literally just flew back from your part of the world, and I'm still jet lagged just a little bit. So, you may have to carry both of us on the interview here.
So good. Let's see how we go.
There you go. So, give me a little background. Who is Alexi Neocleous?
So for most of my career, I've been a direct response copywriter for about 20 odd years, and most of my efforts have been focused on, really doing customized copy for clients, and in the range of 20, 50, 100 grand a year, 100 grand sort of fees, where we would do long copy letters, video sales letters, the entire funnel, email,
Right.
autoresponders, upsell, downsell, etc. And pre-internet, a lot of the time, a lot of the work was offline copy, again, long copy sales letters, print, radio, TV, etc. So that was most of my career, and something like 18 months ago, we kicked off a content agency. So I took a good close look at just where the future was heading, just with all the platforms that are popping up and what they need and what they want. And then I took an inventory of what I'm good at, what I'm capable of, et cetera, and ticked a whole bunch of boxes, thankfully. And I built out a writing team of 17 or so writers. We've got 9 designers for designing social posts and doing videos for clients, et cetera. And so now we produce content for companies, but not your run-of-the-mill content that actually performs. So I've been able to reverse engineer many of the winning campaigns that I did over my career, and really ask myself, what are the common elements, between the headlines, the subheads, the themes, how we open the copy, and how can I transfer that across into some sort of a process for other writers to write at that sort of level, but without charging these ungodly fees that
Right.
I tend to have charged most of my career. So that's where we've ended up. Yeah, so the content we do, I like to say, is it's content that performs. If it's joint at the hip with sensible media buying, or if there's distribution built in terms of email lists and a good social platform, then it's gonna pay for itself many times over. So that's what we do.
Well, you've already tempted me here, because I mean, normally these interviews are about 30 minutes long, and each element that you mentioned we could probably talk about for 30 minutes. So I'm going to do my best to kind of narrow some things down here, but I really want to give you the space later in the interview to kind of unpack some of these things, because I just think they're so germane to our audience. The
Yeah.
things that you said. So give me the name of your company.
Fubi, FUBBI
and
dot co.
and that came from
Oh,
what
it's a
was
long story, longish sort of story. So what the background there was, once I documented, I had a close look at, well, what's required to make content perform, and how do I translate that across to a writing team? It turned out to be quite a big process, like huge. It was, I looked at it and went, oh my God almighty. And then bringing all that together with the design team. And so what we were looking for was a word that typified our process, because we're highly systematized, and Fubi means interconnectedness in Corsican of all languages.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm not Corsican,
Yeah, I was
Greek
going
in
to say, is there
background.
some? Yeah, I was going to say that your name sounds a little more Greek than,
Yeah.
but hey, they're pretty close geographically, and I think there's some cultural similarities there. So yeah. Well, so right now you're running this company called Fubi, and you said you have like 17 like copywriters that are content writers or content providers on your team. So tell me, what caused the shift 18 months ago from what you were doing to say, hey, let me really refine this process, and I mean, obviously you were doing well up to that point, because charging those kind of fees, I mean, it doesn't take too many of those to make a good year. So
Yeah.
what was the impetus for the shift?
Um, you know, well, I guess a few things. I grew a little bit tired of being the person having to be the person.
Right.
And that was the first thing. Second thing is, I sort of felt it was time, because one of the skill sets that I've got is I can think in systems. I can reverse engineer just process. I can't do that, and that's not a necessarily a common trait for someone with a writing background. So I
Exactly.
can do that. Plus, I know how to manage and lead teams. There's a few things that I could do over and above copy, and I thought, geez, you know what, we might be onto something here. If I am able to create an agency that can really produce content that truly, my fellow colleagues look at it and say, holy crap, how did you do that?
Mm.
Well, first up, I didn't do it. My team did it. What, your team did it? And what? So if I'm able to produce that sort of response, and then most importantly, the clients actually generate ROI off it, we might be onto something, because the future definitely, absolutely is content. However, everybody's faced with the same problem. How do you make your content, get free of the clutter? How to make it stand out? There's just so much content out there. And, if there's anything that we know, it's how to craft narratives that get attention. Here we are.
Well, 20 years has given you a long track record to kind of look back and have a lot of content to reverse engineer. Did you also look outside of the stuff that you had produced to see, like, did you look at other outside campaigns and, email campaigns and other projects and say, oh, these have been very successful. What made them successful? And try to reverse engineer them as well.
Yeah, so that would have been implicit in, I mean, the answer is yes, for sure. Because for many years I've had many mentors. I've learned from so many wonderful people. Probably the most notable was he's a gentleman called Paris Lampropoulos, who's now a very, very close friend. He's, in my estimation, certainly the number one health copywriter in the world. I mean, he's been paid over $1 million just for one sales letter. So a number of years ago, I became actually his copy cub. That's what we call them, the copy cubs. And learned from him literally at the feet of the master for a number of years. And whatever skill I thought I had before was irrelevant compared to what I learned. He just has genuine IP that is just, so through him as a lens, I really got access to what the best of the best of the best do. And from that, I did sign a non-disclosure, so I can't show anybody how he does things.
Right.
But what I did as the next best was work out how to create systems that don't sort of unveil what he teaches, but still can get the outcome. Was not easy. Yeah.
So right now you're focusing on your team kind of building these processes and the content. Is this mainly for, are you creating courses that teach people how to do this? What's the main outcome right now? Or are you still producing content for like sales campaigns, email campaigns and stuff like that? Or are you looking more toward kind of the delivery side of training? What are you most involved in right now?
So for the most part, the core of what we do is article content. Because we're a writing team and I have a writing background, the first thing we will do is write a great article. But again, there's a big, long process behind, well, what should the subject be about? What should the theme focus on? How do we open that particular article for that theme? Do we lead with a case study? Do we have great case studies? Can we borrow great case studies? Do we lead with statistics, data, trends, whatever it may be? Often the articles have a call to action. They're the best ones. Where, once someone's gone through the article and they really want some more, we send them through to a funnel of some sort. Now, not all clients have funnels, unfortunately. So we do what we can there. But I say to every client, you want to have at least one good, solid funnel that we can send your traffic to, whether that's a free book opt-in, free report, webinar, free consult, doesn't matter, but something that squeezes a good percentage of names so you can collect that email address. So that's the core of what we do. Is we first start off with great articles that then become the base for videos, social posts for, say, Facebook and LinkedIn, etc., that we then dissect and slice and dice for email broadcasts. And again, depending on the client's business, the really good clients loop us in on strategies. They tell us, here's where we buy our media,
Right.
Here are our core KPIs. Let's make sure we integrate the content into that mix. So we're really taking advantage of the work that you're doing. Again, not all clients will do that. But those that do are the more sensible ones for sure. Yeah.
That's got to make your job easier too. If you get in earlier in the process of creating that, So is the article itself the lead magnet, or is it leading you to a sort of a lead magnet that's entering them into the funnel?
Yeah, usually it's leading towards some sort of lead magnet. And that's because, I mean, 10 years ago, man, you could do a lead magnet that was 2 pages, and that was like a awesome thing. 2 pages now, it will get you the name, get you the email, sure, if you hit the hot button. To squeeze for a 2 page lead, to squeeze a name and an email for a 2 page squeeze magnet, mostly it's not enough. You're
Right.
not going to engage that audience at all. So you really want to load people out. Like, for example, we just went to print 2 days ago. And when I say print, we uploaded to the blog on an article that my team wrote that is 8,502 words. Okay.
Pretty long
And the
article.
subject, a long article. And we reverse engineered a SaaS company, Zoho's marketing strategy. Incredible company. When we did the research, I was like, wow, we've got to do a story on this. 8,500 words. Now, that is for free on the blog. So we could probably give it as a download, but this is where the market's moving, where it's not just about the length, it's the quality standards is increasingly getting higher and higher every year. So for us, as an example, we spent quite a bit of time writing this incredible article that we are going to get a lot of mileage out of by turning into videos, post it on LinkedIn, we'll post into certain groups on Facebook and on LinkedIn, we'll do some cold email outreach, we'll run some Facebook ads, we'll boost the posts. But that one article, though, gets incredible mileage because it's such a deep dive on that company's marketing process. Whereas if it was just a, 13, 14, 1,500 word article, you couldn't get as much mileage. You would need to produce more and more content.
So that article is not for the benefit of Zoho. That's about their processes. So it's in essence that here's the top 10 steps of how they market, that type of thing. Okay. So tell me, since you started Fubi, what would you say would be your lowest point that you've encountered in the last 18 months?
The lowest point. That's a tough one. The lowest point might have been losing one of our clients. It might, and only because it was completely our fault. Now, the funny thing is, the content was superb. The client was absolutely happy, but he was 72 years old. And we just failed to realize that a 72-year-old often needs a bit more hand-holding than normal. And so it was so obvious that I looked at it and went, we've got to upgrade our customer service here. I just thought, as long as we do great content and we're consistent on it, that's good enough. And when he cancelled, I went, what? He's got the most incredible content out there. Absolutely blown away with that content, yet he's just cancelled. And so I wouldn't call it necessarily a low point as opposed to the strongest feedback loop probably we've had since we started. And so since then, we've taken some serious measures around the hand-holding component of the first couple of months of a new client joining us. Yeah.
I mean, you're not only reverse engineering the content strategy, you're reverse engineering even the customer experience, obviously, and as part of that process. So I thought you were going to tell me, you used to have 18 copywriters when you lost him, you're down to 17 now. So
no. Well, here's the thing. No, what's the funny thing is losing writers is not too much of an issue for me because I fully assume that writers are going to disappear on me. It's the writing mindset, right?
Yeah.
So I totally got ready for that and created quite a detailed identification and recruitment process for constantly finding potentially good new writers and then onboarding them. I absolutely know the writers. I know the writer mindset.
Different mindset. There you go. Well, yeah, you are one. So tell me, are they all locally there, or do they work remotely around the world, or where do you find your writers?
Everybody works remotely, and that's done on purpose because there is an abundance of writers. There's no skills shortage when it comes to writers. There's so many that finding them's not a problem. Finding the good ones that are technically at the standard, that's quite a bit harder.
Right.
And even perhaps more important than that is finding writers that have the right belief systems, have the right attitude, because writers they're a funny bunch. They're particularly sensitive to feedback. They're particularly they're artists, yeah. And so quickly during the recruitment process, we will rip apart their material no matter what. we will absolutely, and just to see what happens. And the rider that gets sensitive does not go to the next stage, irrespective of how skillful they are. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. So we have that sort of those sort of steps integrated into our process, so that when clients do give feedback, they are sometimes not sensible and silly. The rider doesn't take it personally. They've got the right mindset to, all right, let's work through this.
Right, and as the owner of the company, I mean, I think that also benefits you in having, just management of your employees. I mean, just not having to spend that extra amount of time just on, personality or extra headaches when they're, like you said, there's this kind of an abundance of content creators out there. So I hate to end on low points. So tell me, what would you say would be your highest point since you started 18 months ago? What was the highlight?
Really realizing that we're able to do, like, feeling in my system, my nervous system, knowing that, damn, we really can do stuff that is really hard to do otherwise at the price that we do. You can do what we do, right? But it would be 10 times the price.
Right.
You would need someone with my sort of background that does, that's not necessarily scalable. It can't do volume. So that would probably, I guess, be it. And probably the second is, I've heard many times from, quite successful founders of companies that are prospective clients or become clients, have said to us, look, I looked at the samples and you know what's got me? Just your headlines. Well, you guys are, that's what's got me from your portfolio. I've looked at your samples and you guys know what you're doing. So to hear that from people that know better, and to hear that multiple times, it's another feedback loop for me to say, yeah, we're on point with process here, with our recruitment, with our talents. It's feeling good. Yeah.
Right, especially for people that have really no vested interest to tell you that. I mean, they're not necessarily trying to draw anything out of you. So, so when you start, I mean, everyone has kind of pain points that they encounter on a daily basis. What would you say would be your top, say, one or two pain points that you encounter with Fubi on a say an ongoing basis? That part of the background of this podcast, the unique kind of the USP, the unique selling point of this podcast is allowing listeners also to speak into the pain points that our guests have listed. So that's kind of the background. So just curious, what would you say would be your one or two, say, top obstacles or pain points that you encounter?
Yeah, probably the never-ending one that I've got, and I don't think we'll ever be able to fix it, is clients that only do minimally utilize the content we do, and they just,
great one.
It's tough because we put so much. I know how much effort goes into creating just one article, and I know the power of the written word. I know like for example, 5 years ago, I wrote a long copy sales letter for a vision supplement. That sales letter is still making money, still making money for my client. And they're just words on a screen. So and that's happened many, many, many times in my career. So I know the value of words. And I know that the effort we go into with producing this content, if it's amplified and promoted and utilized maximally, I know the impact that can make. There's only so much I'll be able to influence that, because you can't make a horse drink from the well, like we can help, we can produce video for clients, and we can create the emails, and we can do the social posts, but we don't have full control of the entire spectrum of a client's business.
So that's a great one. That's a unique one that we've never had on the show yet. What would be another one that just comes to mind?
It maybe perhaps, and only because I'm still working on it. So the big focus for me this year has been our lead generation. So we do Facebook ads, and I do probably 20 speaking gigs a year, and I'm on podcasts obviously, and everything works pretty well. But what I know from my experience is to really grow a business really big, you just need one good, repetitive, reliable, scalable lead generation channel. Just one. You don't need 50. You just need one. And once you get that one, then how I do things is I assign like a risk matrix to it in my mind. I ask myself, all right, so what is the likelihood of this particular activity not working in 6 months or in 12 months? So for example, if I was in the weight loss space and I wanted to run Facebook ads for my product, and that's working a treat, that would have a high risk rating, very, very high. At some point, Facebook's going to give you problems. I've never not seen that happen. So, but that's been my core focus for most of this year, and we've probably, I'm very confident we've found our channel. It's working incredibly well. So, and it's an outbound process, meaning we're reaching out to companies that have never heard us before, and so therefore, what that means is, in terms of the biggest challenge, or the second biggest challenge, is helping those that have never heard us before quickly see the uniqueness and compelling value of what we do. That's the challenge of outbound versus inbound. Your inbound strategy, you've got thousands of invisible prospects that you don't know really where they're at in their evolution, in their qualification to work with you, until they take an action. Opt in, inquire, etc. And then, if they actually inquire, but they've been watching your content for the last year, your conversion rate is going to be massive.
Sure.
Whereas an outbound strategy to people that have never heard you before, it can take longer. And so I'm working on refining our sales cycle, so to speak, for that one channel.
Right. And that hook's got to be really good.
Yeah.
Because you just flash across their screen and either they're interested or they're not, and it's especially on an outbound basis. So those are great pain points, and I'll be anxious to see what kind of feedback we get on those two things, because like I said, we've got a kind of a wide range of people that are listening to our podcast here. But so I want to kind of focus a little bit and just dive a little deeper, just hear a little bit more just about you, and just tell me one person that you follow pretty closely in the online space that really inspires you.
In the online space, what's funny? I don't follow too many in the online space anymore that really inspire me, and that's only because I've seen a lot and been around for a while, and a lot of the stuff that I see is much more tactical now, rather than really focusing on the stuff that really matters. So, like, for example, like a funnel. We all know a funnel is important. What concerns me is there's quite a trend right now to having these really elaborate funnels with the upsell and the downsell and the cross-sell and the tick box on the checkout and I've been down that road too, and I know the pros and the cons of that, and it's missing a key point, and that is you can do all that, that's fine, but really you need to really buckle down and understand your audience really, really well. And all this other stuff, it's all great, but if you haven't laid your foundation correctly, really understand your audience and really clarify your own business model and identify what is it you're able to do that no one else can do, that lots of people are willing to pay lots of money for, that you can keep growing for many years. And a lot of the symptomatic issues that companies face in business, a lot of cash flow problems or high turnover or high acquisition of a new customer costs, etc., they're usually flaws of the business model. So it's a long answer to your question, but this is sort of why I don't watch a lot in the online space, because I actually, as I'm getting somewhat older, unfortunately, I'm understanding the stuff that really matters. And there's only a few core things that really matter, and the rest of it, it's peripheral. I will give you an answer though. It's not in the online space, but I will give you an answer where my focus is most days now. Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn, he has a brilliant podcast called Masters of Scale.
He does.
Brilliant.
It is.
So I spent a lot of time re-listening to that podcast, and he's got a series of YouTube videos called Blitz Scaling. That is just truly brilliant. And I tell you, these guys think the right way. They truly, like Brian Chesky's interview, the co-founder of Airbnb. That guy's a seminal thinker, I think, and he makes it real clear. There's only really one or two core things that matter in your business at any point in time. One or two, and he's got a $30 billion company now.
Yep.
So to circle back, and I was talking about the comprehensive funnels before. I know how problematic they can be to actually make happen, and many times someone starts it today and it's 6 months down the road they haven't got it up and running yet. So that's not what matters usually.
What is one of Reid Hoffman's one of his famous quotes is, "If you're not embarrassed by your first iteration of the product, you've waited too long." So I love that. I've actually listened to that interview you mentioned, but another one that just just FYI, is that another great podcast is called by Guy Moraz. It says How I Built This. Have you happened to? It's on National Public Radio, but he interviews the same type of CEOs of companies. The guy he just interviewed the guy that just created Buffer, I think, in the last not long ago, and I think he has talked to the guy that started Airbnb and others that are at that level. So yeah, very similar in nature and content. But is there a particular quote, like a life quote that is kind of a mantra that you go by that you try to you have taped up by your laptop and you look at every day or something?
I've got it on my phone because the phone's always next to me, and I can even show you. One sec. Yeah, it's this one here. I don't know if you can see what that says. I'll read it if you can't.
Yeah, everything you've ever wanted is on the other side of fear.
Yeah.
Who wrote that?
Well, who's claimed credit for that is a company here in Australia called Founder, Foundr. But I'm not sure if that's the original source, to be frank. I don't really care either way because it's a ripper.
It is. It's great.
It's a great quote. Yeah.
It's great. So just give me a real quick application of how you kind of put that into practice. What's one thing you've done in the last 12 months that you were fearful of doing that you just had to jump out there in the sharks?
Yeah, there's not a lot that I'm fearful of. More, I get just lazy about. And so for example, earlier I spoke about our outreach strategy that is the one lead generation method that's working really well. So I'll tell you what it is just to answer this next question you just asked me now. It's direct mail to CEOs of the country's fastest growing companies. That's working amazingly well, okay? Like 10 to 30% reply rates on our direct mail. So we've hit on
amazing.
something.
Yeah.
It's off the charts. But these are the CEOs of the country's fastest growing companies. So you can imagine how many touch points it requires to get them onto a call, follow up, etc. And they're not very tolerant. They're not. So, and right now it's me doing the outreach. So it's me following up. It's me doing all that. And it's initially it was a degree of discomfort, and that's partly because I'm somewhat introverted more than extroverted. I've always loved reverse marketing strategies. I've always loved have the inbound process where people call you, they're somewhat more qualified, you pick up the phone, you're the expert, etc. I've got very used to that because that's how we ran things for so long. But in the interest of keeping an open mind, we tested direct mail just to see what would happen. And on the first test, we got a 30% reply rate, and I went, oh, wow, okay. I didn't expect it to be
Something's
that
up
good.
Here, yeah.
So then I've realized, but it's outbound, I've never heard of us, so I've got to retool a whole bunch of stuff here around the follow-up. And part of that is dogged persistentness, to the point where it's like, all right, let's talk, just stop following up. Let's do it. And there are some people that I'm genuinely pissing off, I would imagine, because just not letting up.
Yeah.
We've got gatekeepers to gatekeepers that are not returning calls.
Right.
Like we've got, like there's one company that I know of quite well that I've been following up for 2 months. The gatekeeper has stopped responding. Which is an interesting one because their job is to actually be the gatekeeper and just keep in the loop. The very least, had to go through someone else, the gatekeeper, to get through to the decision maker. So that required it's right now there's no fear at all with it. It's just, but initially there was a degree of discomfort, and it had more to do with unfamiliarity with having to do that because for so many years, it was entirely inbound. Yeah.
Those are, I love when you unpack that. You take the questions and you unpack them, and you actually just put kind of meat on the bones, when in your responses, and you have added so much to the breadth of this interview with just your experience and just the fact that you actually take my question and you increase the value of it just by your answer. So I really appreciate you going in depth on these questions. But so if you could go back 20 years, yeah. What is one key piece of advice that you would tell the 18-year-old Alexi 20 years ago?
Yeah, the key piece of advice, it's going to sound a bit silly, but probably I would have chosen different mentors back then. I would have moved my butt to San Francisco probably, and found and got. I always had great mentors, but I realized that some of the mentors influenced my thinking in ways that weren't the most useful at that age,
Uh-huh.
and I had to unwind a bit of the thinking. So the answer would have been find mentors that pushed my buttons a lot more, that did bigger, much bigger things, and probably I would have found myself in San Francisco and New York probably. Those that are never mentors that are never satisfied. You know, that's probably what I would have done. I think that would have been, not to say I'm unhappy with how things have unfolded, but if I had the time again, that's what I would have done for sure. Yeah.
So is there an Australian equivalent to Silicon Valley?
No, no. I think there definitely is not, and if it's going to be anywhere, it's going to be here in Sydney.
Yeah, I was going to say this. It's probably the heart of
Yeah,
the tech space there. I would imagine.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I think there's no place in the world like Silicon Valley, obviously. Yeah.
Well, that certainly has been the case for the last 15 or 20 years, for absolutely. So, is there anything that I haven't touched on? I said at the end I would kind of circle back with you and just give you some space. If there was anything that you think would be useful for our listeners, but that I haven't asked you about, I'd love to just offer you the
Yeah.
space.
Yeah, it probably just dovetails with what we spoke about. Yeah, choose your mentors really carefully. Like choose mentors that make you uncomfortable, that play a game that is so much bigger than you could possibly imagine. Don't choose mentors that already reinforce your biases. Don't do that. That's not what you want. You want mentors that absolutely violate all your biases, make you feel uncomfortable, but play the much bigger game. That's really what you want, because confirmation bias, it's a little bit of a deadly thing, right? Like it reinforces whatever negative view you may have, whatever bias you have built in already, it makes it stronger. And I see now it's your biases that actually limit you. And so you want to be clear of what your biases are and break through those babies as early as you can. Yeah.
What a great way to end our interview. What a great piece of advice. Just choose your mentors wisely. And let me recap exactly how you phrased that, so that they're playing a bigger game. Is that really what you had said?
A much, much bigger game, and they make you feel uncomfortable.
Right.
Because the fact you're uncomfortable means you have biases you haven't explored, and viewpoints you haven't explored, and probably beliefs that are limiting. So if the mentor really frustrates you, but they're playing a really big game, they're producing something that you begrudgingly look at them and say, wow, that's where you want to go. Yeah.
Well, Alexi, I am very grateful for your time today, and this has been a great interview. And how can people find you online? What's the easiest way?
The easiest way would be to go to fubi.co/webinar. Fubi.co/webinar. It's FUBBI.co.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a webinar we've set up that's loaded with content. And what we did was we reverse engineered a lot of our process, how we produce content, how we come up with how we do ideation, come up with ideas, how we lay out marketing, calendars, etc. Loaded with content, good value. So my recommendation would be to go there.
We'll certainly include those on the show notes. And okay, listeners, it's your chance now. He's mentioned a couple of pain points, but he's given us so much good content during this interview, and just so much that we can take away. But I'd certainly encourage you to go to the link that's going to be listed that he mentioned, to the fubi.co/webinar. And once again, it's your time to speak into this, listeners. As we like to say, that the whole thought process behind Rising Tide Startups is everyone speaking into and adding value to the community, because all boats rise in a rising tide. Alexi, thank you again.
Thank you.